I didn't know much about Iran just for the mere fact of being an American, like living inside this country that has groomed us from birth, that people in places like Iran are not even human. I didn't know much aside from realizing that basically everything that I was taught to believe like was most likely a lie. But I can only give like my experience there, comparing it to my experience of being a woman in the United States of America. And also at that time, I was still working as a nurse practitioner at a women's homeless shelter in New York City, which that's the worst kind of oppression that you can experience as a woman. Like the stories that I was constantly hearing, and being involved in that sphere of, not only do we have a crisis of homelessness, which is basically it's manufactured for many reasons. One of them being to have a steady stream of vulnerable, women and children to, be available for sex trafficking and whatever else these guys at the top are doing with their bodies. That was like the level of oppression that I am very intimately aware of, like in my professional sphere, like, working as the nurse at the women's homeless shelter. But additional to that, like I was working as a sexual assault forensic examiner for 4.5 years. So that was like the context of me going to Iran. Like that was like my worldview, the United States of America, I believe. And this is being proven now in the Epstein files that they have the worst record of human rights for women, like not just in the US, but it's like, global. Like,
slavery, then join in the grand industrial band? Would you from misery and hunger be free, and come to your share like a man? There is power in a band of working men. If you'd rather feast off your own land then join the grand industry. Then our share of this earth we shall demand. Come and do your share like a man. There is power. There is power in the band of working men. There is power. There is power that rule in every land. There is power. There's this power that rule in every land.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Escaping the Cave with Dr. GARRIDO. I have a very special guest today. We're here joined by Jennifer Koonings. She's a psychiatric nurse practitioner and a sexual assault forensic examiner. She's also a great informative figure on Instagram and on social media about all issues concerning the genocide in Gaza, the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, Iran as well, which is something we're going to talk a little bit about today. And she's someone who has came under the heat of a lot of Zionist organizations for speaking out in favor of truth and in favor of humanity and in favor of the Palestinian people. Jennifer, it's an honor to have you on.
Oh, thank you. Happy to be here.
I want to start by asking you about Iran. The situation has been quite hot in the last few weeks. I mean, I've heard people speculate that by the 30th and 31st, there should have been bombs. There haven't been any bombs yet. I've heard other people speculate that some of the releases of the Epstein files that just recently occurred were tied to the fact that bombs weren't dropped by the U.S. on Iran. How do you see the situation right now in Iran? Do you think it's going to be escalating into a war, or are things going to back down?
Well, it's an interesting point that you made. I mean, it was interesting timing for me as well. Like, I mean, we're trying to figure out what is the significance of this massive 3.5 million Epstein files drop in this current moment. I think like everyone thought this past weekend, the US was going to begin some massive bombing campaign on Iran. That's like what it looked like. They're completely surrounded with like how many warships have they like positioned around the country at this point. And just the rhetoric is just so, you know, genocidal from all of our leaders who are all implicated in the like the Epstein files for the most part. It's interesting. I maybe was thinking at first like, oh, this Epstein file drop was to kind of like distract all of us from like what they're gonna do in Iran, but then I like saw other things of, oh well, this file release was blackmail against Trump because he didn't bomb them. Or like maybe there's other reasons for it too. Like who knows? Like I really don't know. I'm surprised that the Trump administration, well, the DOJ even did release these files. Like, I mean, they're heavily redacted, but just the criminality, like the sheer criminality, it's hard to contend with. I mean, we all knew like the evils of like the American regime at this point, but it's shocking that like this is how controlled our nation is, and this is at the heart of their intelligence, and maintaining these secrets for how long have been a matter of national security, which is, it just goes to show that at the heart of everything and from this regime, and you can't separate the US from Israel at, you know, this point in time, or, you know, for how many decades. But it goes to show that all of it is based in the abuse and of children.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's so disgusting. And there's this joke, of course, from George Carlin, which is like, it's a big club and you're not in it. And the more you find out about the club, you realize, well, it's also a club I don't want to be in either. It's a club filled with a bunch of degenerates, and that's structurally so. It's at this point, noticing that everyone is involved, you can't come to the conclusion that it's just accidental and just a few bad actors with weird sexual proclivities. No, it's all of them. And it's
Yeah.
structurally necessary because how else can you trust them to come into your group and to come into the elite and to get access to the things you get access to when that rising up the ladder occurs, if not through blackmail, if not through ensuring like mutual destruction if they ever speak out against you, because you're involved as much as they are. Except for Musk, that even in that sort of affair was begging to be included and was not invited to the party, which is very strange. It may be even more pathetic. That's like, please invite me to these big parties that you're doing.
Yeah, it just is continuing to show the depravity and just the like how fake these like Western ideals are. Like I mean, it's just, this is what it's based in. And then relates to their rhetoric in the Middle East and against Islam or whatever fucking,
Yeah.
excuse they give us of like, this is the true face of like the terrorism that we're dealing with, that we've been fed as freedom and democracy and human rights, which if you peel back the layers, it's literally like abuse, exploitation of women, of children, of any other vulnerable group. And then you're trying to convince us that like Iran, like women in Iran are more oppressed than the United States of America, more abused than, these guys in the United States of America, and basing it all on like wearing a scarf on their head. Like, it's so fucking like, it's superficial. And I mean, I haven't found any like member of the IRGC inside the Epstein files. So that tells you something.
Yeah, none of the bad guys are in the Epstein files. Kim's not on there, and Diaz-Canel is not on there. Maduro's not on there. Xi Jinping nor Putin. I think Putin is mentioned, but he's not on there. And none of the so-called pariah states and evil individuals that our Western governments tell us to hate are on the Epstein files. So,
Yeah.
but you mentioned the topic of women. One of the things that interestingly happens in the West, if you so much as talk favorably of Iran, or even if you say we shouldn't be pursuing regime change, is you'll get a flood of comments, many from people that consider themselves leftist, many from people that were even pro-Palestine, which is, for me, completely absurd, talking about how horrible and evil the Iranian government is and how you hate women if you don't support the government's overthrow. You spent some time in Iran as American woman. What was your experience there like? Was there like the tremendous oppression of women that is talked about in Western media, or was the situation the opposite, or is there more nuance that's always left out? How was your experience traveling across Iran?
Well, to be honest, like I actually uploaded a video talking about my experience on my YouTube like just the other day, because I've been getting a lot of hate recently about basically saying that I don't support the United States bombing Iran. And I was invited to go to Iran last year as a group of journalists to report on like what they did, which was that the United States and Israel bombed Iran for 12 days straight. And I didn't know much about Iran just for the mere fact of being an American, like living inside this country that has groomed us from birth, that, people in places like Iran are not even human. So I didn't know much aside from realizing that basically everything that I was taught to believe like was most likely a lie. But I can only give like my experience there, which was comparing it to my experience of being a woman in the United States of America. And also at that time, I was still working as a nurse practitioner at a women's homeless shelter in New York City, which like, that's the worst kind of oppression that you can experience as a woman. Like the stories that I was constantly hearing and being involved in that sphere of, not only do we have a crisis of homelessness, which is basically it's manufactured for many reasons. One of them being to have a steady stream of vulnerable, women and children to, be available for sex trafficking and whatever else these guys at the top are doing with their bodies. So that was like the level of oppression that I am very intimately aware of, like in my professional sphere, like, working as the nurse as at the women's homeless shelter. But additional to that, like I was working as a sexual assault forensic examiner for, 4.5 years, at the time that I, got fired and had a witch hunt like come after me because I, didn't buy the Zionist slop over the like mass rape hoax. So that was like the context of me going to Iran. Like that was like my worldview. The United States of America, I believe, and this is being proven now in the Epstein files, that they have the worst record of human rights for women, like not just in the US, but it's like, global, like our the tentacles of the American regime. So going to Iran, and look, like there's major cultural differences, like that's just, but it's not like anything for me to, like, that's not my responsibility to comment on. It's not my responsibility to like give some sort of analysis on. Like, I'm not Iranian. I went there simply for the fact that, there's a massive media blockade that is on Iran. So that's why they invited people there, to be able to report on this. Because at that point, like prior to going to Iran, I didn't even know, like we didn't know how many people were killed in Iran with American weapons, by the way.
Friends, we live under a dictatorship of capital still, which means that in order to keep up the work that we're doing, we need financial contributions. There's many different ways in which you can help us financially. You can become a Patreon at patreon.com/MidwesternMarx. You can buy some of our books, which you can find at midwesternmarx.com/books. You can sign up for my classes and the other classes we offer with our Marxism school, which you can see at the Midwestern Marx selfie page. You can also support my work personally as a writer and everything else that I do through Substack at my Substack page, which is Philosophy in Crisis. In addition, if you want to support the American Communist Party financially, you can also donate to the party at acp.us. If you want to subscribe to the party's journal, which I am the chief editor of, you can do so at redamerica.acp.us. And if you can't support us financially at all, at least help us get our message out there. Share this program on your social media, share it with your friends and family and co-workers, and get it out as far and wide as possible. We thank you dearly.
So I am getting hate for like, having good things to say about my experience, that it's biased and whatever. Sure, that's most likely true. Like we all come to experiences with our own biases. However, like the feeling that I had, and everybody is entitled to their own opinion and their own experiences, but mine is that I felt very respected there as a woman. In the US, like there's just a baseline like hate of women, and like like we're so like not, I don't know, just like women in general are very oppressed. Like the number one reason for pregnant women in this country to die during pregnancy is homicide by their partner. That's and Iran has a better maternal mortality rate than the United States of America. So like going off of just those two statistics, the status of women is better in Iran than it is in the United States of America. We just do not hear about these stories of what's the true status of women in this country because they don't have access to media and they suppress these stories. So my experience in Iran was positive as a woman. Of course, like, there's always going to be, the outliers in any experience. But, and I spoke to women while I was there, like, how is this, how do you feel like your colleagues at work, men, like respect you, like this and that, like things like that. And, I got positive responses, and, like, it just seemed like a general feeling like women were empowered there. They had careers, they had high positions, they had just all of these things that in the US you kind of like look around and it's kind of, it's not the same. I mean, there is still, I believe, like the hijab is on the books, like mandatory. I'm not like, don't quote me on that. However, like when you walk down the street, there's plenty of women that are not wearing it. So I don't know. But that's not my responsibility to speak on. And if the people in Iran like have a problem with the way that things are running in any way. Like they should have self-determination, including the women there. So that's basically all I have to say about that.
Yeah, that's I think that should be the American position. Like, not do not intervene when we see our government lying to us in order to. I'm hesitant to say this concept now because of the association, but in order to manufacture consent, um, in order to, I don't know, I guess manufacture consent.
Was he the one that like first coined that
Yeah,
term? Oh,
it
okay.
was him and another co-author, I think, Edward Herman or something like that. I forget the name, but
Who
it sucks
is
that
he in the Epstein files too?
I don't know. I haven't looked for him, but
Oh,
maybe we can
geez.
start attributing it to the other guy, the non-Epstein guy.
Hmm.
But our position should be that if there was a genuine opposition in the government that wasn't just instigated by Mossad and the Zionists and the U.S., like, sure, let people do what they want to do. If they want to act in unison to formulate a new popular government that defends their sovereignty, that's fine. But there's a lot of people in the U.S. left, especially that I've seen in my comments, that they act as if the day after, in their heads, the Ayatollahs fall, you're going to have like this great progressive leftist government. Like, no, you're going to have a government that's going to be a slave to the U.S. and it's going to be a colony, and that's not going to have sovereignty at all. And sovereignty is the main thing. Sovereignty is the main, because when you have sovereignty, you can fix your internal problems. If you got shit going on internally, you can pressure in different areas and fix the issues. But when you don't have sovereignty, you don't even have a semblance of a say. All of your policies, everything is dictated by someone that is not you. Everything is dictated from outside, and there is no other force in Iran that's fighting simultaneously for sovereignty and against the Ayatollahs. And you could be in the West and you can be a leftist or whatever, and you can have different cultural values from this and wish some things were different, but the real world is the real world. And if something like the government of Iran were to be overthrown, which I don't think it's likely, not only is the country not going to have any sovereignty, but the biggest aid that the Palestinians have in the region will be down. And
Yeah.
that's objectively an anti-Palestine, pro-Zionist position to take. I want to ask you, perhaps, what do you think the difference is when it comes to the treatment of women in Iran and in the U.S.? Because the U.S. flaunts itself as kind of the homeland of all of these progressive values. Some would call it woke, when it comes to all these different issues. And it quite explicitly speaks about how women were oppressed in Iraq, and some sectors of the ruling elite use that as a justification to manufacture consent, or now in Iran. But it seems to me, at least, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this, like, for them, women's empowerment and the condition of women is very intimately tied to how much they can openly sexualize themselves and become like sex commodity objects for men. And that's the sort of freedom that I see, for instance, Iran and other countries, maybe China even, or Russia. That's the sort of freedom that they don't want, because they see it through their cultural lenses as tied to a deeper form of unfreedom. But what are your thoughts on that matter?
Well, I mean, you're kind of speaking to the heart of like what's, being uncovered with these Epstein files. And it's we've been conditioned to believe that the less clothing that a woman wears, and even girls, minors wear, like that's like equates to how much freedom they have. And I think that's been the result of the US militarization. Obviously, like propaganda has been a major component of that, but like they're like intimately tied to the Department of Defense. Like they have a working relationship together. They work together to not only brainwash all of us into this belief, but the entire world is affected by the US media complex, which is Hollywood, which is Zionist. And yeah, so it's just exposing this. And I've seen this again, and we're getting inundated with all these pro regime change, like pro monarchist contents on social media, whatever it may be. And that's like a lot of these reels that they're making is doing this whole like before and after. I don't, like showing them as a child, like in a hijab, or just saying that they used to live in Iran or whatever, like giving some like before story of their life, of how they were oppressed by things, including what they were forced to wear, and then giving the after where they're like, dancing in lingerie and like spreading their legs and like what, it's just like, I don't know, that's personally, to me, that's not an indication of how much freedom and how much power you have as a person, but most especially as a woman. But that to us is what we're constantly being force fed. And it's pretty disgusting, also considering in light of everything that's being exposed with these files and everyone who's implicated in it. And it's just such a bare face of how fake this all is, and how we've been lied to, and how our children are being, used for this reason, to be offered up to these powerful people. It's disgusting. So no, I don't subscribe to that view at all. And it also shows us how disgusting this culture is, and how, like, the porn. I mean, this ties intimately to the pornography industry.
Yeah.
The pornography industry, which is basically most of what is on the internet, and how many of those girls and women, or boys and men, like it's not just girls and women that this happens to, but that's the majority of what it happens to, but how they're being sex trafficked. So like this sex positivity and the pornography and whatever, like it's all just being exposed for what it is, which is it's disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting for myself as a communist, when I hear liberals speak about how repressive communist states are when it comes to these issues. It's not that they're repressive, it's that they try to avoid this commodification of the image of sex that's so prevalent here in the West, and that's degrading and dehumanizing. I wanted to ask you a question about how you see the American people reacting to these recent file releases, because it's like, at what point is it too much, or are the people just too desensitized to do anything about it? Like, this is as a Marxist scholar, like one of the central questions we ask ourselves, like, what is it that makes people act in a revolutionary manner? And we tend to assume it's, well, they have the wrong ideas, and once you give them the right ideas, they'll be able to act in a world historic manner or something. And the interesting thing about our age is that kind of everyone shares across the political spectrum a similar disdain and hatred of the established order, a very core level disgust for these people. At least that's how I see it. I see it in my neighbors and my communities. And I mean, you'll talk to a lot of Americans across the political spectrum about communist ideas, and they sound pretty interested. Insofar, in most cases, as you don't mention the dirty C word for them. But that means that, like, there's something deeper at play than just them having the wrong ideas, because they have this cynical distance to the ruling order. They don't actually believe the shit the elite tell them, but they continue to act in these institutions and to act in ways as if they believed, in order to, fundamentally continue the way that things are. So how do you see the reaction of the American people? Are we too desensitized to do anything about this and ask for justice? Or do you think maybe this could be one of the final straws that breaks the camel's back?
I'm not too sure, actually, because I think that especially in the US, like there's so many things that are working against us that would be necessary for the people to be activated. Like obviously we've been inundated with just like this disgusting culture that we're living in for our entire lives. And not to mention like the extreme wealth inequality that people are basically living paycheck to paycheck and having housing insecurity and all of those things, like constantly working just to survive. Additional to that, we are basically sedated, and basically, I mean, been made to be completely incapable of action by like the dopamine focused society that we live in. Like we're literally like just all, cocaine addicted rats in a cage. Like it's just our brains are like, people's brains are not even capable of getting and of being capable of even like doing anything. And I'm not saying that as like a diss to the American people. I've like even seen it in myself because of social media, because of like this pornographic culture, because of like all of these substances that they feed us, alcohol, so many things. But I believe, and additional to that, it's like almost like 20% of the American people are on a psychiatric medication, like, and that's in addition to like the crisis of substance use that we have in this country. So that's kind of like how I see all of this. It's like people are essentially anesthetized by so many, like in so many fronts, which has made the American people, I think, incapable of actually, reacting to anything in the sense of being able to do anything. We've just been lulled like by so many things. So it's like, I don't have faith that these newest revelations are going to get the American people to actually like unite and do anything. Like we're too busy fighting each other about, who voted for Donald Trump and like, oh, things would have been better with Kamala, or like, like, oh, well, like I'm going to excuse all these Zionists because they are now against ICE or whatever it may be. Like we need human rights in Iran, or we like what, it's like we're too focused on like fighting each other, or like hating on each other for offering critiques of politicians, which like, come on. So no, I don't, I mean, I want to be proven wrong that the American people will unite and realize like all of these petty disagreements are literally meaningless and they're literally laughing at us. And I personally believe my first instinct to this file drop was like, this is a humiliation exercise for them and for us. Like in the sense that like, they're laughing at us. Like, look, like we can even like abuse and torture and kill children and laugh about it. And what are you guys going to do about it? And then like all of us we like literally like this is the depravity of what it is. And like, we still can't do anything about it. Like, I think we're fucked. Like, honestly, like if this is like, where do we go from here? Honestly.
Yeah, the American people need like the fucking ice bucket challenge or something done to them. They need to wake the fuck up, because it's after 2+ years of genocide that everyone has been seeing through their phone, the most horrific, and there's been just such a plethora of images that'll make your stomach turn. And now this, which it's making your stomach turn in very similar ways. It's, if you don't wake the fuck up, I mean, these are the people that had like a revolution 275 years ago over like a tax hike. What's happened to the American people? But yeah, I share that spirit of that, you're speaking in the spirit of Gramsci, pessimism of the mind, optimism of the heart. I really do think that some of these tendencies are hopefully could be undone. And it's so tied, as you said very correctly, to the attention span, the TikTokification of the brain, if you want to call it that. If you can't sit there and actually concentrate and think and pay attention to something for a prolonged period of time, which is what's required to do writing, which is what's required to do reading, you're not going to be able to have the time to think about things systematically. And if you can't think about things systematically, you just see it as this person bad, that person bad.
Yeah.
And you're able to be manipulated very easily. And if you can't think about things systematically, you can't move against the system. You can only move against very particular things within it. And at that point, you're just like, cutting tree branches off that could be regrown without addressing the fundamental roots of the problem.
Yeah. Sorry, my cat. I mean, we're seeing that in real time with the, again, manufacturing of consent for the war crimes that the United States wants to impose on Iran again. The American people, I mean, this is like the heart of everything, like getting the support and the consent of the American people to do these things. And the American people, like, we're literally so like emotional to and that's been by design. Like, and that like short attention span and very reactive, like the reactivity that's been born and bred into us, in the sense of, not in the sense of reactivity to actually do something like tangible, but the reactivity in having an emotional response and like canceling people or ideas or whatever it may be. And in that being so, like we've lost the ability to critically examine and critically think through issues. Like even it's just someone like you or me, like seeing the claims of what the IRGC did against its people, and what are the numbers they were saying? Like in 3 days they killed like 30,000 people. Like how is that even possible? I mean, just to like, yeah, like these claims are like horrific, and wow, like it makes you want to be like, oh my God, like it's so evil. But like, let's like take a second and actually like critically examine the issue. How long did it take them to admit that even 30,000 people were killed in Gaza? Like a year or more? I don't know. Like how, and it's also that's the whole like video that I made about all of this, like of look, like we basically should be looking at the United States of America as Jeffrey Epstein at this point. Would you believe anything coming out of Jeffrey Epstein's mouth? Like whatever it may be, like he could be making claims like, oh, you know, this other guy like was more evil than me, like whatever. Like it's like, look, like I'm going to critically examine and actually investigate those claims because it's coming from someone as evil as him. Like you cannot believe anything coming out of the United States of America's mouth. Like, come on. Like it's so much worse than calling like the pot. I don't know. It's like don't throw stones in glass houses. That's like all the claim that's all the argument that I was making of like the United States is the last entity to speak on human rights. So like we need to start there.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to say, but today the perfect symbol of the United States is Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. There's not an individual that more perfectly captures.
Yeah, and he had ties all the way to the White House. Yeah. Like he was intimately involved with like the Clinton administration, and even like in the Obama administration, he was in close contact with that council. There's email exchanges between Epstein and the White House counsel, Kathy Rumler. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but he's advising her in how to shape a narrative of a Secret Service breach, a White House Secret Service breach. And then like he's also literally has a direct tie to Joe Biden. Like he's talking about it. Like the whole web of all this like cancer shit that they're literally, I mean, this is like a massive money-making operation for them, and Epstein was like intimately tied in all this cancer research and cancer treatment and whatever, like but he was in direct contact with Joe Biden. So this is America. Like we can't separate them. And also we cannot separate America from Israel. Like that is something else that Jeffrey Epstein is exposing to us. Those of us who like have the ability to like critically examine left.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to a point you were making about Iran and drawing comparisons with like deaths and you think about like how long it took for the 30,000 people to die in Gaza. I think it was within a month or two. The amount of images we received in just that span of time was overwhelming, an overwhelming amount of images
Yeah.
from a society that has less access to technology and to posting than Iran does. If 30,000 people were killed by the IRGC in Iran in a few days, you would know. You would feel it. You'd see, like, your feed wouldn't stop having videos pop up. And I personally have not, the videos I've seen have been protesters with advanced weapons given to them by the
Yeah,
West.
like rioters.
Yeah, it hasn't been like peaceful protesters or the government just massacring people, which is what 30K would imply.
Hmm.
I want to switch course to asking you about some of the recent research that you have been doing as of the last like couple months into Mount Sinai and the whole network of the Epstein class, I guess,
Hmm.
and how everything there is interconnected. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, well, backstory. I mean, I'm a nurse practitioner, but prior, I'm also a registered nurse, and that was like my first job at Mount Sinai Hospital. Like, I got my like nursing license in 2017, and Mount Sinai Hospital was my first job, and I was working there. I was first working on a medicine unit, and then I was in the ER, and I worked through COVID, like the COVID crisis in New York City, and I was there until 2021. However, and I believe in 2018 or 2018 is when I got my certification to be a sexual assault forensic examiner. So that was like a separate role outside of the ER that you basically, the way that the Mount Sinai healthcare system operates is anytime a sexual assault case would present at the emergency room, well, the victims in New York State, like they have it's not a mandated reporter, like it's not a mandated reporter situation. So they have to actually request a forensic exam. So if there was a sexual assault case that presented to the ER and they wanted a forensic exam, the Mount Sinai health system, they have a whole list of certified sexual assault forensic examiners who could take call, and that's what I did of anytime a case would present to one of their 3 ERs. One of them, there's only 2 now, I suppose, that do well. At the time that I was there, it was 3 emergency departments that had a sexual assault forensic examiner program, and that was the main campus, which was Jeffrey Epstein's spot. Beth Israel campus, which Mount Sinai was allowed to close by the city of New York last year. So that program has been completely erased. And then the Queens emergency room. So anytime a case would present in any of those spots, then if I was on call, I would respond to any of those cases. And I was at Mount Sinai until 2021 as like a regular employee. I went from the ER, worked through COVID, and then was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is such hell, like being a registered nurse, especially in the emergency department. I was so burnt out. So I was like looking for other jobs within the system. And actually I got hired for a management job, and that was like the role that I was in before I left Mount Sinai. So I was like in a management position for 3 months there, and I realized that everything I had like previously like suspicious about this place of being very evil was completely correct, because I was privy to all of those like management emails of like the way that and just like their operations. I was like, I'd rather sell my fucking soul than work like in this capacity. Though I was sad. So, and also at that time, during the COVID crisis, the rates for being a registered nurse in, where like the travel nurse contracts like were insane. So I was like I left Mount Sinai and then started doing contracts. But actually in 2023, that sexual assault program, I had such a great relationship with them that they wanted me to come back. So they created like a role for me as a per diem position to be a sexual assault forensic examiner, but I was still like I was working in other capacities and in NP school at the time. but I went back to Mount Sinai like as a per diem role, just doing like those cases. And one of the and I would estimate that I've done in that role at least like 100 to 150 sexual assault cases in the city of New York. And none of my cases ever went to trial, by the way, like which goes to show how little they care about, you know, sexual violence. But one of my cases in 2023, yeah, it was 2020, summer 2023. I remember doing that case and just knowing that it was going to go to trial, because it was literally just like the, you know, textbook definition of the type of rape that anyone would care about, right? Like, it's a stranger that grabbed her. Like we had a DNA match from the kit that I did. It was a prior offender. Like there was like video evidence. It's like all of those things. And actually it did go to trial. So actually in the summer of 2024, I was in Palestine at that point. Like I had wanted to go to do protective presence. That was the reason that I went there. And I started getting messages from the district attorney, the Manhattan district attorney. Oh, like we need you to come and do case prep, like blah, blah. I don't know. She was doing like messages with me. We finally got on a call, and the connection was horrible because I was like in a city in Palestine, a town in Palestine that, you know, I mean, like obviously the West Bank is under like such extreme like occupation, and the connection was horrible. And it was also just like such brutal apartheid and occupation that I was like seeing with my own eyes. And when I was on the call, like the connection was bad, but I said to that Manhattan, she's a assistant district attorney at the Manhattan office. And I mentioned to her, like, oh my God, I'm sorry, my connection is bad. Like I'm in Palestine. And she was like, I could just tell that like the tone completely changed. And then they just, I don't know, they like went crazy after me. Like she like subpoenaed me so I flew back to New York to be able to testify for this case. I had never testified for any case before. So I didn't know like, you know, how any of this went. I thought it was serious, like of, oh, if I don't, they say that they're going to like arrest me if I don't show up. And my director at that time, who, you know, later ended up just basically ghosting me over all of this. She was like, no, like they could have just used like another forensic examiner in your space. Like you were out of the country. Like, why did they like insist that you fly back? And I'm like, I don't know. Like so I got back to New York City. I had arrived from like the West Bank, like the day before. I'm like wearing my keffiyeh in like the Manhattan district attorney's office. Long story short, like this, I did end up testifying for the case, and I was only on the stand for like a couple minutes. So I was just like, I don't know. She had mentioned something to me like, oh, I know I spent like days with you doing all this case prep and hours, but like, I only need you to basically state your name for the record and that you were the one that did the forensic exam. And like, this was your evidence kit. And so I was like, okay, like fine. So that's the last that I heard of it. And then it was like a month later, basically, that Mount Sinai Hospital, like employment, I don't know, the like human resources, they started contacting me of like what was going on with this case. Like, why did you get downgraded from an expert witness to factual witness? And I was like, I don't know. They didn't say that to me. They said it was a slam dunk case, that they didn't need me to go through all this shit. And then the actual director called me into a meeting at one point. Maybe that was like the next month, but I was already working as an NP somewhere else. So I did it Zoom, and I'm happy that I did that because I was able to record it. But she starts telling me, I had no idea. I was totally blindsided. And she was like, oh, we have no reason but to fire you because the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is telling us that they would never use you again as a credible witness because you don't have any credibility, because you went on your social media and said that you were a forensic examiner. And for that reason, you know that like no mass rapes happened against Israeli women. And I was like, I never said that. I said that the evidence that they were presenting as, proof that some mass rape happened to justify a genocide was complete bullshit. That's what I said. And she was like, well, like they said that they would never use you as a witness again. And since that's an essential component of your job, we have no choice but to fire you. And additionally, you were so distracting with your social media that the district attorney's office, they didn't even get the rape conviction because of you. Because of you, the victim didn't get justice. And I was like, okay. So that was like, after that, I was like, I need to like, I mean, there were things like coming out in the media, like when, like at least by 2023, of like Epstein's connections to Mount Sinai. Like he had Mount Sinai Hospital had received multiple donations from him. And that was after his conviction as a pedophile, child sex trafficking pedophile, which, I mean, everyone likes to make the argument now of like, oh my God, he was only convicted of one state charge of soliciting a minor for prostitution. Yeah, that was the sweetheart deal that he got. He was initially the subject of a like 90 count indictment by a federal indictment for like heinous crimes against children. But with Alan Dershowitz and his legal team, he was able to arrange a sweetheart deal where he only had to plead guilty to one state charge, which doesn't even exist as a federal charge because you cannot be a child prostitute. Like, that's an oxymoron. So that, to me, I was like, oh my God, I need to like research what's going on here. Like, and it's like, the truth of it is it's so much worse than even I like could have imagined. Like, this was Epstein's hospital. I mean, I know he has connections to all of the hospitals, but he had at least two doctors there who were helping him traffic, in the sense that they were covering up for his crimes, seeing victims in a clandestine way, and who knows, maybe seeing them off the books. So like and how many Mount Sinai staff knew about this? Epstein was a VIP patient there. They accepted more than, I don't know, like they won't even say how much money they accepted from Epstein, but it's more than $100,000. It's more than $200,000. But also Epstein is known, he like writes like, oh, we like to donate in an anonymous way. But yeah, I think the most damning part of it is these physicians, and one of these physicians, Eva Dubin, was his former girlfriend and close associate, is accused by many victims of being an awful person, including Virginia Giuffre, of helping him with all of these crimes. And she's still a medical doctor, and her name still graces like their breast cancer center that Epstein was an intimate part of. He helped fund the Dubin Breast Center. Like he sent victims to work in the Dubin Breast Center. He's messaging with Steve Bannon, like laughing about how he has his hands all over the Dubin Breast Center, and like making light of like women's breasts, and like always like talking about like funding breast cancer research. Like, this place needs to be investigated like yesterday. And it's disgusting to me that even after everything that's come out with Eva Dubin and Glenn Dubin, that their name is still gracing the breast cancer center. And the president of the co-chairman of the hospital, James Tisch, he's in that whole Tisch family. They're all in Epstein's contact book. That's the father of the NYPD commissioner in Epstein's contact book, and her former address is in Epstein's contact book. It's like, so like when they're talking about the Epstein class, they're all in there. But I think the worst part of it for me, like being a medical provider, and I used to work at that emergency room that Jeffrey Epstein had a direct line to, just the criminality of these physicians who obviously engaged in horrific medical malpractice, but this is criminal. This is criminal activity that they are involved in. Helping him traffic. I mean, there's emails of them, Eva Dubin, along with Jess Ting, who's the director of their transgender medicine and surgery program at Mount Sinai, receiving victims from Epstein's island. So he's flying victims from the island to New York City to be seen by Eva Dubin and Jess Ting. Like, that's trafficking. Like someone with blunt force trauma to the head that Jess Ting is then putting in 36 stitches. It's such criminal behavior, and the fact that like they're seeing these patients in a clandestine way, a transgender surgeon, when this patient should have been sent immediately to the emergency room. Who knows what happened to that patient? 36 stitches to the head, it's a massive injury. And the things coming out in the Epstein files now is, I mean, some of the abuse that they like to partake in is abusing victims with hammers. So that seems on par to that kind of injury. So these doctors are still, Eva Dubin isn't on the board of trustees anymore, and I don't believe she's employed by Mount Sinai Hospital, but this guy, Jess Ting, he's still the director of their transgender medicine and surgery program. And I mean, going down that whole rabbit hole, like Epstein was like funding, like, I don't know, this documentary, which is literally like propaganda of, humanizing this guy, Jess Ting, and, what a great service he's doing for the transgender community, giving them all these surgeries. Epstein funded that film.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty dark, and this guy needs to lose, I mean, both of them need to lose their medical licenses. But it just goes to show, like, I mean, this is something that the victims always mentioned. And this is something that even, any medical provider would know. Like, there are so many doctors that were like working with Epstein to cover up his crimes. And all of them need to be, but the sad part of it is that they all protect each other and probably nothing will happen to them. Like, so I don't know, like, we'll see what happens. I'm working on an article right now about all of this. But it's like, it's even worse than I even imagined. I don't know how physicians can be this, but this is, a lot of them are so evil. It's coming out again and again and again that these physicians with such access to human beings are committing really grave crimes, and the trust and that patients have with their physician, it puts them in even greater position to be able to abuse and suffer no consequences. It's pretty disturbing.
Yeah, and it's especially disturbing in that field, because their whole essence is supposed to be caring for people, helping them remove the conditions that produce illnesses, or remove the illnesses themselves, or manage them in various ways. And the system is structured so that the opposite is what is done. You go back to Hippocrates, where the Hippocratic Oath comes from. The whole purpose of medicine is almost self-abolitional. It's to create the conditions where the necessity of medicine itself becomes superfluous, because you're not only treating illness and the actual problem, but you're also treating the sort of habits that could lead to certain problems. And that's just not profitable.
No.
That's not profitable. And so it's better to give either bandage solutions or solutions that come embedded with 10 different other problems that then they can now profit from, than to actually cure you or have any preventative care. And then once you're in that world and you're surrounded by the satanic drive, and I'm sorry to put it in that way, I'm not a religious person, but I'm fine calling it the satanic drive of money and greed, and the ethos of capitalism, it's very easy to get wrapped up in all of these things. To ask you a question that's probably going to be somewhat in vain, has any mainstream media reached out to you about this research that you have been doing, or has anyone covered it besides like your Substack? Because I had the experience now, my best friend and the person that I co-founded the Institute with, Eddie Smith, he's been doing amazing cutting edge resource into this foundation that Erica Kirk established with her parents when she was 17 years old.
Yeah.
In the former Yugoslavia, right next to a NATO base that was the one being accused of doing all the main sex trafficking in the region. And the people that the specific U.S. military official that was the person that was in all of these documents as being responsible for this sex trafficking and for silencing in criminal ways the people that wanted to report on it, that was the person that she was inviting to to these centers that she was creating with like orphaned children, which is very disgusting. And then you reveal all of this information that's very censored in the West, and no one wants to talk about it. No mainstream media has invited Eddie to speak on any of this, and even for the sake of just a truth-seeking mission, right? Maybe to call him out on his bullshit or show where he's been wrong. But has anyone reached out to you about this investigative work that you've been doing?
Well, I'll even say that when all of that was happening with me and with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and Mount Sinai Hospital, I didn't get like any press basically over it. The only outlet that really covered my story was TRT, and I had reached out to many people, but it was like it seemed like they didn't want to cover it, maybe because of like the affiliation with like sexual violence, but it wasn't even that I got fired. It was like that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office like conspired against me to ruin my life. But regarding like my research about, I mean, I had reached out to a few outlets that I thought would be interested in covering this because they have covered Epstein stuff. In my previous, I mean, what I came upon was really damning information pointing to the very much likelihood, I'm convinced at this point, that Jess Ting performed some sort of procedure on Jeffrey Epstein, possibly it's a very likely, it's a possibility that he did something to alter his anatomy, like his genitals, because like this guy is first of all, I mean, he's the director of the transgender surgeon and medicine program. He's this cleanup guy, and I don't know, it's just like it's a possibility to me. And I felt like I did reach out to people, and it seemed like there was this that's kind of the reaction I've gotten in some parts of people not wanting to look into this because of like, oh, like, well, this is anti-trans. And it's like, no, this is not anti-trans. This is, I mean, this Epstein had such specific anatomy and such it was such an identifying characteristic about him that was the whole reason why the Palm Beach Police Department took victims. One of the reasons why they took them serious at the beginning. They were able to describe his egg-shaped penis. So it was such an identifying characteristic about him that he was like deposed about it in 2009. I think he would probably want to change that about himself. So, and then, I mean, if you also look at the picture of like this guy that they're showing us that, oh, he's dead. That's not a dead person. Like any medical provider, any nurse, any whatever could tell you that's not a dead person. So yeah, what's going on there? But I mean, to your point, like nobody really wanted to cover it. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just write it on my own. But the other point that you made about the child charities, like this is like one of the themes in this as well. Like Jess Ting is married to this woman that in her bio, like she says that she founded some, Chinese orphan charity when she was a teenager. So I don't know, like we're all looking at these things as like, it's a little sus at this point, like considering like the web of what we're like wading through. And you see the same things again and again. These child charities are just, serving as a vehicle to offer up children, especially untraceable children, vulnerable children that nobody's looking for. And, basically who knows what's happening to these children. That's not an accusation of him or his wife and any of that. It's just, it's something that when we see these things now, like we have to investigate, we have to question, like, are these people really who they are saying they are?
Yeah, it's the sinister character of it all, because these institutions present themselves as providing a service of care,
as
caring for these kids, and in some instances, it's not every single one, but in some instances, you find the complete opposite, and that's absolutely stomach turning.
Hmm.
But Jennifer, I've taken up roughly an hour of your time. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, hearing your story. Is there anything you'd like to plug and have our audience check out of yours that you'd like to mention before we go?
Well, as I mentioned to you earlier, I started my YouTube channel. I think it's been like 3 months or so. But so I'm kind of like trying to post more of my work there, since, I think my biggest platform is my Instagram, but it's so throttled. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I guess it's like pushing me to do something else. But then I also realize, like, I have more than 3 minutes of content or 3 minutes of things to discuss. So I'm posting more of my work there, and a lot of the work that I've been doing in New York City is regarding all this land theft and deed theft that's happening in New York City. So I'm like working with a lot of the victims and telling their stories on that. And I mean, when you're uncovering these cases, it's like a lot of them are leading back just to the same place. So it's all connected. It's all the same guys behind a lot of this. And, you know, it's really things like this, I don't know, there's like the stolen children, stolen organs, stolen land, stolen houses. It's like all of this is being used to fund what? Like the Zionist project, and that's including
Mm.
I don't know, these nefarious things that we're fighting against. So yeah, I'm posting a lot of that there. So if they want to check out my YouTube channel and my Substack, of course, I'll be writing more about these doctors that are, Epstein associates, which, I mean, these guys need to lose their licenses, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna have all of your relevant social media links, your Instagram, which I've been following for quite a bit of time. You do great work, and
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
I do think it's throttled. It should be getting a lot more views than what it gets. I will also link your Substack, which I just found, I think, yesterday, and your YouTube as well. So
All
thank
right.
you
Well,
so much
thank
for
you
being
so
here,
much.
Jennifer.
This was a, I won't say, it was a informative conversation. I'll say
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
All right.
Likewise.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.